Welcome to the Mick and Mike CryptoCast. I'm Mick, that's Mike. We got a lot of things to cover today, Mike. We've got politics, of course, and also goats. It's gonna be an interesting conversation today. Let's start with let's
First of all,
start
wait.
with
I want to
yeah.
say how smart you look today. You got the glasses on. You yeah,
Well,
you're looking sharp. You're looking smart today.
I appreciate it. I wish I had a better story for why I have these glasses on, but honestly, it's not good. It's let's save that conversation for another time, okay? But I appreciate the compliment. My goal is to always look and sound smart when I'm sitting next to you. So,
It's not too tough to do that sometimes.
well, Mike, let's look at the political realm. PolyMarkets, or like Trump likes to call it, polypolls. This is the current scenario right now. Whether or not you think this is accurate, it is what it is, I guess. 62.5% Trump, 37.5% Kamala Harris. I'm wondering if any of this is going to change after this, which is revolved around World Liberty Financial presale, and things are not really taking off like they're supposed to. They have secured like 13.7 million in total sales, and that's like 4% of their goal. So not doing well so far. And I know that you and I talked about some FUD around their team, but I mean, what do you make of this current pre-sale situation?
Yeah, it doesn't look good, right? I think it's only 4% of the token supply. 14 million of the 300 million has been raised so far. I mean, there's a few things, right? We talked in the past of there's a bunch of red flags here. The team who's running this also ran a DeFi project, Aerodrome Finance, that got hacked earlier this year. You know, there's the kind of investors don't like the initial non-transferable nature of the tokens. I think it gets locked for 12 months. Personally, I don't think that's a big deal. As an investor, you kind of want longer term time horizons for investments. But again, there isn't really anything different about this project compared to other DeFi platforms. I think it's a fork of Aave. It's just the really only difference is that Trump is behind it. So I think maybe some people, maybe his audience isn't, or let's say his audience who already wasn't in crypto, and who know what they're talking about, understand that what available DeFi platforms are out there. Maybe those people aren't that into crypto to begin with, right? So maybe there's a little bit of misalignment there, but it could be any one of those things. But yeah, it doesn't look good. And yeah, I don't know what's going to happen with the project. If they're going to continue to run. But obviously the goals aren't being hit or even come close to.
I love seeing a candidate get like really deep into crypto. I just hope that it's not too deep for somebody like Trump. But yeah, we'll see what happens on that front. But you also brought something else to my attention, which is about Uniswap. You shared this on your Twitter about how they're coming out with UniChain, and how there's this whole narrative now around more applications coming out with their own chains. We're seeing it with UniChain, we're seeing it with WorldCoin, but it appears that the bigger story here is that Uniswap didn't really consult with their DAO on creating this chain. And so, what do you make of this whole, shift of power, or the fact that they're not really going through their standard checks and balances protocol? I mean, what does this say about DAOs moving forward?
It's yeah, it's such an interesting. DAOs are just interesting organisms to begin with, and you have this kind of separation of usually labs, right? Something labs, right? That in this case, Uniswap Labs is an actual company, and then you have the Uniswap DAO, the token holders that vote on governance, and really how closely are they aligned is a spectrum. I think there are some entities that are extremely closely aligned with their DAOs, and really just essentially such a huge percentage of their decisions, large or small, are thoroughly discussed on on the discussion forums, in Discord and Telegram, and almost to a fault where it's like it's hampering speed. But that's what you get with kind of like decentralization, right? And then you got other times where maybe it's earlier. It's an early product, where speed is super important, and the labs entity develops products faster, and gets them out to market, and decentralization kind of saved, or the votes and governance are kind of saved for like larger decisions. The interesting thing about Uniswap is that like they've taken different approaches, right? So for this UniChain launch, essentially there was very little discussion. It seems there's very little discussion with the DAO. I don't know exactly how much deeply it was discussed, but a couple of people from the Stanford Crypto Association, student-run association, said they basically didn't know. But in the past, Uniswap, there was the bridge issue where they were choosing between, I believe, Layer 0 and Wormhole to be the official Uniswap bridge. And I think that was discussed pretty heavily. There were like multiple governance votes there. So kind of there's some inconsistencies in process here. So I'm not quite sure what the template is there in terms of Uniswap governance, but I think every DAO is run differently, and every DAO is involved in a different level of, there's different levels of involvement. It's just pretty kind of surprising is that inconsistency between, one big decision and another big decision. So I want to get your take on the DAO issue, right? Like, what from your experience, and like, you run kind of a community group, right? So I know it's not necessarily specifically a DAO with a token, but like there's different levels of interaction and everything. So like, how do you see that? How do you see kind of the future of DAOs happening? Do you think there are like better models, better incentives to get more interaction, get more governance, get more people invested in governance? And yeah, what's your take on that?
Yeah, so it's something that I've been thinking about a lot, actually, in terms of how to maintain this, checks and balances. I think when you look at from the traditional business, I always like to look at the traditional world because we can learn a lot about human incentives and what motivates people. And I think about when I used to work for a radio station, completely different industry, but we had this scenario where you had the operations department, and you also had the team that was responsible for the sales.
Yep.
And if you had only the sales team that was making all the decisions, then the entire brand of that radio station would fall apart because everybody would be incentivized by the money aspect.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of the spectrum, if you just solely do operational things, then nothing ever gets done. You're never able to create, to not even just generate new revenue, and you have a new way of thinking. So I think in this particular case, if there is something in place that can override the procedure in specific scenarios, then I think that would work well. Now, what those scenarios are, I don't know. I think it's definitely a case by case scenario. But in this particular case with Uniswap Labs and their DAO, if they had something in place that said, look, in these specific cases, unique cases, we can override our standard procedure, then I think it would work well. So maybe in this particular case, they felt like, okay, this is something that's new, and they had this opportunity and they needed to pounce on it, and they didn't have the time to go through those necessary steps to come to a decision. That's the downside of a DAO, right? Like on the security side, whenever I've had a DAO come to me and they were looking for like a security audit, it was a decision that they all had to make collectively. And many times that is very difficult to do versus in the traditional world, you have one decision maker that's making all the decisions. So there's definitely some cons to having that model. Decisions get made very slowly. So I can kind of understand why they did that. But yeah, from a media perspective, there's some branding concerns there. That's just kind of nature of the beast when you have that kind of name. But yeah, I think if they had something in place that I don't really mind that decision.
Yeah, I think that's the interesting thing where there seems to be some inconsistencies in process, right? Where there were past decisions which are, just as important as this one, where there was kind of a long thought out process and got a lot of input from many people in the DAO and those who wanted to provide their input. But yeah, seems like that was kind of bypassed in this situation. But I also think is just like in terms of we're going into an election now, right? And I think there's all this money spent being just get out to vote, pushing people to get out and submit their ballots, right? Like I think you see a lot of that apathy in terms of not many community members get involved in voting in DAOs. Like they're token holders, but either they don't know about some certain votes, or maybe they just delegate or whatnot. So I think that's a big problem too. Is increasing that engagement and increasing the interactions with the DAO, and getting them to vote on some of these decisions when it gets to that point. So again, it's like not perfect. It's you got to find a balance between speed and decentralization, and it's a tough balance to strike.
The other smaller story here, I guess, is you're like reading between the lines, is that UniChain is going to be utilizing the OP stack, which is obviously nothing new. I mean, we're seeing this with Base. They're using the OP stack as well. Many people may not realize that. They may think that Base is its own chain, but they're actually utilizing the OP stack. And something, they just recently made the news as well. They overtake Arbitrum as a top Ethereum L2 by TVL. And that's in large part to Aerodrome. And I want to give a quick shout out to Max, who comes on my channel from Archway, and he shared some financial statements with me of Aerodrome. And last time I checked, they weren't necessarily in the positive, but they were generating some pretty hefty fees. And so I can see where they appear to be like a large part of the success that Base is having in regards to the TVL. The question here is, can Base keep this momentum up? There's always these balancing shifts in power from all of these L2s. First it was Arbitrum, now it's Base. You still have Optimism out there, which again is generating, may not be large fees, but they're still generating the fees from Base, and now they'll be generating the fees from UniChain. What do you make of this, like, moving forward?
Well, there's a few little layers there. I think with Base's success, I think it's just super clear how important distribution is. They obviously have all of Coinbase's distribution power behind it. Very well funded. You've got an exchange that has hundreds of millions of users, and obviously Base is benefiting from that huge user base. And I don't know what to make of it. Look, you've got Arbitrum's infrastructure that I know some teams use. A couple of teams that we've invested in use Arbitrum's infrastructure, and then obviously you've got the OP Superchain that Base uses. And I think still it's I can't speak to like which one is more performant and which one is more like technically easier to implement. But you've got a big horse race here for kind of creating these other the infrastructure that helps create L2s. But I think look, we're talking about billions in TVL. They're both doing very well, and I think we're with this ETH scaling roadmap, right? Like L2s are obviously a very large part of that. So I think we're going to continue to see more L2s have success. But I think that's a pretty big. Arbitrum's been in the lead for a very long time, and Base taking over, they've got a ton of momentum, and just shows that the distribution is just so powerful. All the Coinbase resources that Coinbase has is massive there.
This story I thought was very interesting. Speaking of things not going according to plan, so there's a experimental AI bot that I guess was created by an Andy Airy, if I'm not mistaken. So he created the infinite backrooms, and basically he set up two instances of the I think it's called the Claude Opus AI to talk to each other about whatever they wanted. And based on the training, it started to promote a weird meme token, from what I understand, called GOAT, and that was picked up by a Twitter account called Terminal of Truth. And the meme token went from a 1.8 million market cap before the bot started talking about it to over 300 million. So it's kind of, I don't know if it's exciting or scary to think about AI being essentially a KOL, right? That's that, because that's exactly what's happening with the story. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
It's funny, we at Deep Ventures, we, have our eyes closely on the crypto and AI space and invest there. And, we have had thoughts of what are some of the possibilities of that intersection of crypto and AI. And this is one of the weirder possibilities. So yeah, you talk about essentially letting LLMs just go to town and say whatever they want. And then, they wound up, based on, I think, probably a lot of that, weird crap that they're talking about on 4chan, so they started talking about this very nasty internet shock meme with the goats of, and where like some guy does like gross stuff with his butt. And then, but like it was on Twitter, this like Terminal of Truth is kind of a representative of this infinite backrooms. Like the initial weird thing was that it was talking to Mark Andreessen. Right? Like it started talking to Mark Andreessen. Andreessen gave it like a $50,000 grant in Bitcoin to like fund some of the stuff that it was saying it needed. It wasn't, it was actually saying, oh, I need money to, run servers, et cetera, et cetera. And then someone wound up, not the AI didn't create the meme coin, but someone used Pump.Fund to create a meme coin called GOAT. And then the Terminal of Truth picked that up as part of its whole GOAT, mindset that it was in. And yeah, it is just like, it's so strange. But like, you're just seeing this interaction, just when you let these AIs kind of run free and dependent on all the inputs that go into the models, it can come up with weird stuff. But then, hey, look, it can get funding from one of the most influential VCs of our time, and then pump a meme coin to, I think it hit over 400 mil at all-time high in market cap. So it is extremely strange, but like I think that's like the world that we're living in now, where it's just these AIs are, adapting, they're engaging, they're constantly taking in information and using that information to come up with its own conclusions, and that could have real impact on markets and people and people's lives who might have invested in GOAT. So it's pretty amazing and crazy to see.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the more unique stories. And speaking of investments, every time we talk, Mike, you bring to me three projects that are on your radar that have secured funding. And I want to start with, being that we're on the topic of AI, I want to start with this one. I think this is called Praxis. They secured 525 million for is that Utopic crypto, I guess, AI friendly city. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but give me the background story about this. How did you come across this?
Yeah, so Balaji Srinivasan, he's been talking about this network state, right? That you can have essentially create nations that aren't necessarily like geographically constrained, but just people who have just similar mindsets and similar interests. You have these network states all across the world. But like Praxis is taking this kind of like one step further, where they're actually looking to build like a physical space, a city that's kind of like a crypto and tech utopia, right? So like you mentioned, there's 525 mil. I think there's definitely kind of like milestones that need to be met to get that 525 mil. It's not all just sent in one shot. But yeah, they're basically building and list like internet native city. Fewer regulations for tech companies like you mentioned AI, for crypto, biotech, energy. And yeah, the possible locations right now they haven't chosen yet. I think they're just going to choose it by early 2025, is like somewhere in Latin America or in the Mediterranean. And I think the initial is going to be like 1,000 acres and have 10,000 citizens. Look, it's big. It's kind of this big, hairy, audacious undertaking, and it's it's cool. Like I think a lot of people, especially in crypto, would love to live there. It's been tried before. I think like Akon, he tried to do something at Akon City in Senegal. Satoshi Island is still something that pops up every now and then. There was it's one called Puertopia. I think there was supposed to be in Puerto Rico, which was once a very hot place for crypto, and kind of an alternate lifestyle down there that was based on crypto. So yeah, I think it's cool. They've certainly got a good chunk of funding to be able to pull this off. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people would be really interested in, people in crypto have this, very, very libertarian view, and I think it seems like that's the kind of approach that Praxis is taking here.
Yeah, the 500 plus million. I mean, that's a lot of money.
Good chunk of change.
It's a good chunk of change. Yeah.
Yeah.
Next on the list is Towns, which they seem to be building a on-chain messaging platform, which I've seen this concept before, so I don't think it's anything new. So I'm curious to hear from you, why them? Like, why did this one really stand out?
Yeah, so Praxis is taking kind of the physical nature of building communities, and Towns is looking to do it more on chain. And I think it's just they let users build digital town squares, quote unquote, right? Like blockchain-based online communities, integrates online ownership, composability with smart contracts, privacy with end-to-end encryption. So I think when I was looking at some of the product screenshots, it looks like kind of similar to Discord with with channels and messages, and there's some media in there, and there's, I mean, I think Discord has, hundreds of millions of users, obviously, even though it is like universally hated by crypto, is like, it's crazy. Like you've got ADD with all the channels and everything. It's just, it's overwhelming at times. So like, but I think, having like a bit of kind of the ethos of ownership and, layering the blockchain ethos on top of that, I think definitely adds a different user experience, and something that's there's probably going to be some like portability of activity across these across communities within towns, so you can kind of port your identity across different communities. And yeah, I think it's cool. I think it's kind of morphing that community ethos with the blockchain ethos, and yeah, and it could be something big. I think, like I said, tons of users use Discord, and layering on that blockchain ethos is something that I think a lot of people will be interested in.
Last on the list is Yellow Card app.
Yep.
So what's interesting is on their Twitter, they don't have a website, but they do have a YouTube channel, which is I thought was kind of interesting. But tell me a little bit about what these guys are up to.
Yeah, so it's a couple of interesting things going on here. One, they're an African crypto exchange, and I think their primary business was they're the largest and first licensed stablecoin on and off ramp in Africa. So there's a couple things there. One, stable coins are like the killer use case right now. Like we just saw that Stripe acquired Bridge, which is a stablecoin bridge, for like over $1 billion. It was Stripe's largest acquisition, and I believe crypto's largest acquisition as well. So stablecoins are clearly like crypto's killer use case right now, and it makes a lot of sense. And it makes so much sense with emerging markets like Africa, right? A lot of the nations, the economies are very poorly run. The inflation is through the roof. So getting access to stable money is so valuable to those citizens. And Yellow Card has done a great job. It has operations across 20 African countries. Over 3 billion in transactions have gone through their platform. But they're making a bit, or they're at least raising this money to grow actually its B2B business. So having businesses manage their treasury and use stable coins as opposed to just the retail, which has been their primary target segment. So overall, I used to work for a crypto protocol based in Africa. So like I kind of for a while studied like just how business is done there is so different than what we know in mature markets. And I think I really think that the utility that stablecoins provide for both businesses and retail is massive. So there's a ton of room to run for companies like Yellow Card that focus on that region of the world.
To your point, in Africa, there are more people with mobile phones than there are with bank accounts. So the market itself, there's a huge demand, and Nigeria is one of the most is one of those countries where the crypto adoption is like through the roof, and so there's a lot of opportunity there. And it's nice to see this type of use case where this industry is kind of known for a place where everybody tries to make a lot of money, right? And here's a use case where there's a huge need, and this is something that can provide a banking alternative, especially for those that can't have a bank account. In a lot of these countries, you need a referral to have a bank account. Some of these people may not even have an identity. That's the thing. Like in the United States or other developed countries, we don't even take that into consideration. But 25% of the world is unbanked, and I would imagine that there's a large part of that in Africa. And so here's a perfect use case. So I love seeing this. Thanks for bringing this to my attention.
Yeah, to your point, look, we like in the U.S. The everyday, when I talk to people who aren't in crypto, the first thing they always say is like, "Oh, I can't really buy a coffee with Bitcoin." All right, and for the most part, I mean, you can over here and there, but for the most part, it's true. And for the most part, we don't need Bitcoin to buy coffee. We've got all this financial infrastructure. We've got the world's global reserve currency. So all of this, the change into the financial industry that crypto is eventually going to achieve right now in the US, like people don't really need that, right? But step outside of our US bubble, step into Southeast Asia, Latin America, Africa, and you really see the pain that they feel being unbanked or only having access to this currency that inflates 1,000, 10,000% a year, even more. So yeah, I mean, I think you just look at that killer use case of crypto and stablecoins right now is definitely number one. And on top of all the speculation, but yeah, just cross-border transactions, stablecoins, just seeing that adoption is awesome.
Well, Mike, that pretty much does it for this week's episode. For those that are watching, if you found this video helpful, please consider subscribing to the channel, like this video, comment with some thoughts, and check out our playlist because we've got more conversations, whether it's politics or other companies that are getting traction on the funding side. We've got it all for you, so be sure to check that out. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next one.
Yeah, man, what is it, 3 more weeks, and then maybe we can finally stop talking about politics, right?
Yes, about 3 more weeks.
Hopefully, couldn't come soon enough.